take a few minutes and show the new Lua tools, OCX Tools. The main new features this time around are a new loot window and the ability to scale all the windows to double size if needed for those of you running on giant resolutions with 4K monitors and such. So I'll just go through kind of quickly since most of you have probably already seen this before. So if you look, when it starts up, you get a list of commands type !OCX help. So if you do that, you'll see a list of commands pop up. The most important one is Control-Shift F12. It'll toggle the toolbar down here. You might notice we got a little toolbar. Control-Shift F12 will just turn it on and off like so. All the other windows can be opened from here. I did make a special command for the loot window. I'll explain why in a little bit, but I mean you can get to it from here, or you can just hit Control-Shift-L to get it on and off as well, same as the toggle for the toolbar. All right, and then I'll explain all these commands as we go, but I figured let's just quickly show all the windows so you know what they do. So start at the left and go to the right. First window is the XP window. If you click that, it shows you your current adventuring pool, your current producer pool, and how much XP that you've made within the last hour. And that's a sliding window, so you know it comes and goes. So that way you can kind of see how close you are to attenuation, for example. You can tell I just got done with an attenuation run a few minutes ago. So that's the XP window, and in the next release I'll be adding another row in here, which will be the producer pool delta over the last hour. So for those crafters and gatherers out there, you can kind of see how you're doing in that arena as well. The next window we have are the timers. I made 3 timers. You can open up 1, 2, or 3 of them, and they each they have a number 1, 2, 3, and then they have a name. And the name is you can set it to be whatever you want. Like this timer 3, this is whatever over here. You'll notice right here there's a rename timer option. So if we say !rename timer, give it the timer number 3, and give it a new title like troll or something, then you'll notice that it reset, and now it will say timer 3 is now your troll timer, or whatever you want. And by default they count down, so you can see the arrow here points the direction. And so this has a 10-minute timer, has a 5-minute timer, a 1-minute timer, but you can change these by adding or removing 30 seconds to them. And then when you start, you know, they start counting down. However, if you'd rather have like a stopwatch, which also comes in handy a lot of time, you can just click that button, and now they'll start from 0 and count up. And they'll just keep going until you stop them. The ones that are counting down will of course stop when they hit 0. And so those are useful for any number of reasons in the game where you might want to time something. Alright, so that's the timers. Next we have the daily stats. And this one shows, you know, how many, and this is by daily I mean it is based on your local clock on your computer. So every time it's the next day, these will all reset to 0. And of course you can reset them to 0 anytime you want by hitting the R button here. I don't really want to reset mine right now, so I won't show that, but go ahead and try that if you want. But anyway, it shows how much gold you've got today, how many kills you've made, how much XP you've got, and how much producer XP you've gained throughout the day. That's, you know, pretty handy. And along with the gold, there's a lot of times where you'll get gold that it doesn't actually show up. So for example, whenever you sell stuff to an NPC vendor, or you make a vendor sale, or maybe you talk to the Oracle or complete a quest, etc., you'll get gold from that oftentimes, but it doesn't, there's no log message to parse, so I don't know that you got the gold. So I made a command here called add gold and an amount. So I could say add gold, you know, 3, and that should make this go to 775. So, oh, and look at that, it does. So you can manually add gold there if you get gold from other sources that aren't tracked. So that's the daily stats. The magic resist is a simple window. It shows you all the magic schools here. And you have a base resist, based on your skills and whatever, and then you have an effective resist when you take weapons and armor and whatever into account. So you can kind of see how resistant you are to each school of magic. And you have the DPS window. By default, you have a 5-minute sliding window. As you can see, some people haven't quite slid off yet. But as you're out fighting, these will go up and down. They're much more interesting in your party. Let's go to an hour. There we go. You can tell I was in party with Mac. It was just, reaming everything with his fire. But anyway, so that kind of shows you these scales are all relative to the top DPSer, and it kind of goes down. So you kind of see who's doing what in your party over time. That's the DPS window. And then we have attack stats, which are just kind of a small summary of how you're doing with your attacks. So it shows you the number of attacks that you've done. Since, of course, the R will reset it to 0 at any time. So since the last time you reset it, shows you how many attacks you've done, what your max damage is, how much total damage you've done, your average damage, and the crits. This should say crits percent. I'll change that next build. But so 23% of my hits are crits in this last thing that I did. So that's pretty good. On attack stats, kind of shows you at a glance how you're doing. And then if you really want to dig into it more, there are the attack details, which brings up a lot more detail about, okay, it breaks down all of your attacks by type. So you can see, and by highest to lowest on the amount of damage you've done. So thrust, I did 89,000, double slash I did 77,000, etc. on down. And so all of your, at least your top 10 attacks will be in there. It caps it at 10. It shows you how many times you used each attack, how many times you crit it, what percentage you crit with that, and then your average hit damage for non-crit and your average damage per crit. And it also gives you a standard deviation, so you can kind of see, if you're into that, how close each hit is to the average. And it also shows you down below how much damage you took and from what. So I took 10,000 damage from default attacks on various creatures. And these are other attacks that I received. And if you want to see, so this is showing, this is my damage, but if you hit the arrow keys, you can actually switch to other people and see their damage. Like Alistair, he's quite the archer. So bow, rapid fire, aimed shot. How many attacks he did, how much total damage he did, crit percentages. He's got some pretty impressive crits there. So that's kind of cool, and how much damage he took. It's pretty useful also, like in PvP, if someone's attacking you, you want to see, well, what do they hit me with and how can I defend against it? You can kind of see down here, who's doing what. So it's pretty interesting. And also, it's not just party members, it's also, the monsters that you're fighting as well are also in this list. So that is the attack detail. I'll get to the loot tracker in just a second. And of course, there's an about window you can look. OCX Tools, it kind of tells you the current version. And this version coming out is 1.2.9. And okay. Oh, reset daily and reset XP, those are the same as just hitting those R buttons on the window. That's a kind of a leftover, I just haven't taken those out yet. So let me show you the loot tracking window. This is the new one that I just added. I mean, there was a loot window before, but it's been completely redone. So now the loot window is, you can have 20 items in each window, but it's basically a tab, so you can have as many tabs as you want. So you have a default one called loot, and then I've added one called hunting, and I've added another called mining, and you can kind of group the loots that you're tracking by what tab you're in, and you can have as many tabs as you want to add. It's totally up to you. You can track it, by area, by type, by whatever you want to track it by. So let me show you, and that's what these commands here at the bottom are. So like if we say, let's add a tab, so we can go loot add tab, and you have to use a parenthesis on this one. There was parsing reasons under the covers why that became necessary. Anyway, loot add tab, let's call, I don't know, let's call it the crag, just the crag tab, like for the crag foothills or something. So I add that, and now we have a new tab, and you can see it put it at the end, and I can, all my other stuff is still there. And there's my crag tab. And also each tab will show you the last time it was reset. So this one, hasn't been reset because we just made it. This one was reset 2 hours ago. This one was reset 2 days and 17 hours ago, etc. So if we want to add some loot, we can say loot, track loot. Let's say we want to look for suet. And the loot is case sensitive, so make sure that you take that into account as you're typing it in. So great, now we can see suet, and every time I get some suet, this will increment. And now let's say I don't want to track suet anymore, so I can say loot, untrack loot, give it the word suet goes away. If you try to add more than 20, it'll just ignore it. But you can always add a new tab for something else if there's more than 20 things inside whatever tab you're looking at. If you don't want this at the end, let's say I wanted to move it over, you can say loot move tab. Tab name is crag, and I want to move it to the left. And boop, there it is. Now the mining tab is at the end, and before that, the crag tab, right? And I can move it again and again, whatever. Now let's say, oh, you know what? I really don't want that tab anymore. So I can say loot remove tab, crag, and now it's gone. No more crag tab. So there you go. That's the new tab window, the new loot tracker window. So hopefully you guys will find that useful. I had a lot of people requesting an enhanced loot tracker. So let me know what you think of that. Now, the next big feature of this release is the scaling. For people who run a high resolution, they say this is way too small. It looks okay on my screen. I don't have a 4K monitor though, but if I did, yeah, I could see how this could be pretty small. So you'll notice down here there's a command I added called set scale. So if we just say bang set scale and give it either a 1 or a 2, by default it's 1, but if we say 2, everything doubles in size and gets nice and big, so it's easy to see on your giant monitors. And all the windows scale. Oh, yeah, it didn't move it over. That's a thing I need to fix, but for now you can just set scale 1 and move all these things over, right? Let's move that one over. It'll be fine. Let's move that one over. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, okay. So all the rest of these should be fine. So now let's go back to set scale 2. Right, so you can see how these are nice and big now. And easy to read. And all the windows are that way, every one of them. So all of you with small monitors, hopefully that will help. Not with small monitors, with giant monitors and giant resolutions that make this look small. So now it won't be so small for you. And the one other feature that I added this release is called, if you notice up here, we have Headless. So some of these windows, like the DPS, the daily stats, the XP, and the attack stats, these 4 windows, whoops, let me move the attack stats over a little bit more. We'll go back to double scale. Okay, so these 4 windows are nice, and I like to keep them up all the time, but sometimes I like them to just sort of fade into the background a little more and not have so much detail on my screen at once. So I've made what's called headless mode. So if you say bang headless, sorry, that's my dog, all of a sudden you'll notice that all the data is still there and it's still updating fine, but there's no more Chrome. You can't move it or interact with it. It's just showing you the data. So, which is nice because A, there's less stuff on the screen to draw, so it's more efficient and faster, and B, it just kind of stays out of the way, so you can just kind of glance over at it now and again if you want. And so typically what I would do is move this stuff to where I want it to be. And then, whoops, guess I should have done it from the top down. Of course, I don't usually run at 2x resolutions, right? So, all right, so then I move it where I want it, and then I say headless, and then I just kind of have that over in the background, and of course, scale 1, right? I usually have it, so here's what it'll look like on my screen, and it's usually more condensed like over here. But anyway, you get the idea. So if you find that useful, great. And there's a couple of additional things I want to add, like this. The XP window doesn't really fit the theme of the other windows, right, with the fonts and stuff. So I'm going to update that and get everything looking the same on the next release. I'm also going to be adding the ability to track heals. So you have your attack stats. I'm also going to add some heal stats in here as well, so you can see how much heals you've done and things like that. And of course, I already talked about adding the additional producer XP. And I'm also probably going to add some crafting stats, like as you're crafting, how many criticals and failures and things that you have when you're crafting. I'm going to look into that, see if I can grab all that data to provide that, to make sure that the numbers you're getting are in line with what you're supposed to be getting. So there you go. I hope you enjoy. Please leave any feedback on the forum post, and I will hopefully talk to you later.